Fabiano, and today I will promote my own culture where I am from. But before that, what is culture? Culture is a word for the way of life of groups of people, meaning the way they do things. It encompasses the social behavior, institutions, and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and habits of the individuals in these groups. So now, I will promote my own culture, which is called Ibaloy culture. The Ibaloy are an individual ethnic group found in Benguet province of the northern Philippines. The Ibaloy are one of the indigenous people collectively known as Igorot, or we call it Igudut, who live in the Cordilleran Central of Luzon. Ibaloy society is composed of the rich, or we call it Baknang, and three poor classes, the Kohans, or we call it Pastol, farmhands, Silbi, and then Ibaloy slaves, or we call it Bagaan. The Ibaloy have a rich material culture, most notably their mummification process, which makes use of salt water to prevent organ decomposition. Pounded guava and patani leaves are applied to the corpse to prevent maggot or worm infestation. The Ibaloy build their houses, or we call it balay or baang, near their farms. These are usually built on 5-foot posts, or we call it tukod, and contain only one room with no windows. For cooking, they use pots, or we call it kambong, in food compartments, or we call it shuyu. A wooden box filled with salt serves as the cooking place, or we call it shakulan, and 3 stones as the stove, or we call it shakilan. Traditional weapons of the Ibaloys are the spear, or we call it kayang, shield, or we call it kalasay, bow and arrow, we call it bakang and pana, and war club, or we call it papa. The Ibaloy also employ cutting tools like knives, farm tools, and complete bounding implements for rice, mortars, or we call it tusyong, which are round or rectangular for different purposes, and pestles, or we call it bayo. The rice winnower, or we call it kiag, are made of bamboo or rattan. Music is also important among the Ibaloy, with the Jew's harp, or we call it kudang, nose flute, or we call it kolasheng, native guitar, or we call it kalsyang or hambitong, bamboo striking instruments, drums, or we call it solibaw, and kongs, or we call it kangsa, and many others. They are considered sacred and must always be played for a reason, such as Kanyaw Fest. Men wear a G-string, or we call it kowal. Women wear a blouse, or we call it kambal, and a skirt, or we call it atan or kibot. Older Ibaloy people may have tattooed arms as a sign of prestige. Because of fertile soils and climate of Benguet, the Ibaloy are predominantly farmers. There are 2 varieties of rice. These are the kintuman and talon. The kintuman is the red variety of rice that is long-grained, tastier, and comes in various forms. The second variety of rice is the talon. On the other hand, it is the white lowland type that is planted during the rainy season. Ibaloys also plant root crops like kamote, gabi, cassava, and potatoes. Vegetation includes cabbage, celery, and pechay. There are also several kinds of wild mushrooms, in addition to fruits like avocados, bananas, and mangoes grown in many areas. Meat consumed includes pigs, cows, goats, and chickens, as well as wild deer, or we call it ulsa, and big lizard, or we call it tilay. Finally, our main culture is called Kanyaw. Kanyaw is a festival or ceremony of the indigenous people in northern Luzon. We usually do our kanyaw or tayaw in different celebrations such as wedding ceremony, festival, and Thanksgiving.
Kapya kumain lumsaw